Why music festivals suck? Because there's a lot of naked white women in it.
With great power comes great responsibility, and you have the power to sign up for extratug.com for exclusive perks and videos. Check it out. Am I still upside down, Chris? Please put me back up normal. My head's getting big. Hey, quick question. Do you enjoy music? Quick question.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy relaxing outside? Well, how about I
No, I'm a VTuber, no.
suggest to you the music festival where you can go and get the worst experience
Look at how many people there are. Ew.
of both at the same time. Music festivals are a perfect way
Lollapalooza. Ugh.
to pack all your favorite bands into one sardine can of capitalism. There's nothing like a $20 burger, an extremely
Slap.
unattended porta potty, and just probably the worst sunburn you're ever gonna have while listening to a jam band suck for 4 hours straight. The 21st century has seen an explosion of music festivals. In the US alone, there's over 800 a year. You can't just see your
That's a
band
lot.
play anymore unless it's a little rinky-dink piece of punk band. No, you gotta go to a music festival. You gotta sit through a sea of musicians you would never give a about to see your one person that you're excited for. And do you enjoy sitting just a little bit? Maybe take a load off? Well, let me introduce to you the
You cannot sit at a music festival. What the hell?
concept of standing all day in the sun. Just standing
10
up.
hours.
Waiting. Isn't that the best? And God
No,
forbid you're
dude.
any height below 6 foot, because a 6-foot person's gonna come up and ruin this for you, and you're gonna watch your favorite band play through their cell phone that they're holding over their head. And
Yeah.
real quick,
And you can't see goddamn shit.
why are you filming a band playing music? No one wants to see that. That's like going to the aquarium and taking pictures of the fish. Just go home and Google fish. You'll see a better picture of them.
Okay, but I have a really old photo of me going to my first concert, and it meant a lot to me. But I didn't do it the whole time, to be fair.
Anyway, as inescapable as this billion-dollar industry is today, the roots of these corporate-sponsored stages stretch back thousands of years. So in order to find out how the music festival became the only game in town, we gotta swim through the history books real quick and go back to the very
Capitalism.
beginning, as I'm one to do. Grab your sunscreen and water bottles and make sure to bury that bottle of Smirnoff a couple of weeks before the festival, because
3 weeks ago, we buried an Nalgene bottle full of vodka on the grounds of an electric zoo. Before they started putting up the stages, let's see what happens. Dude, I don't know, man. This just screams alky to me.
today we're talking about music festivals. I should have said that better.
But first, let's do an ad.
Hey gang, this ad's gonna be super different from the other ones I've done before. I'm not gonna try and sell you something, no promo codes. I just wanna talk about Beyond Meat for a hot sec. You know,
the
Beyond Meat,
hell's
you've seen
Beyond
them. They're
Meat?
literally paying me just to talk about Beyond Meat and why it's dope. So I'm gonna do that. You guys should probably listen.
Bro, his haircut changed because he's eating vegan meat!
Oh, but Tucker, plant-based meats are full of chemicals. First of all, one, shut up. Two, that's not even true, actually. You might think they have to pump it full of chemicals to make it taste that good and that's similar to meat products, but it's just the fact that food science has gotten far along enough to mimic the texture of meat using only plants. Extrusion process of heating, cooling, and pressure, baby. It's all science.
It's okay. I'll just eat a steak tonight.
Hell yeah. Beyond Meat
Don't they use cockroach flour? I don't know. I'm not sponsored.
is made with clean, simple ingredients like peas, red lentils, avocado oil. And it's a simple, it's like making pasta. It is a simple process and it tastes unbelievably good. Scary good, I would say. Plant-based meat isn't just for vegans either. Dorks. Sorry, I shouldn't be making fun of vegans while talking about Beyond Meat. But rocking the carnivore diet helps people build muscle and lose weight in the short term. But long term, brother, you gotta toss a veggie in the tummy every once in a while. This is
Okay, but that vegetable is extremely processed. Look, I'm gonna have to criticize this, okay? I'm gonna have to criticize
health
it.
and longevity, brother. Come on, love veggie. And arguments are swelling that getting your protein from plants is a great way to do that.
Yeah,
there you
it
go.
is,
It's
you're
yummy,
right.
healthy, not BS,
It's
and a
not
great alternative to
processed,
animal
though.
meat when you want to mix it up a little bit. No promo code, no limited time offer. I don't really know what to tell you to get this at every grocery store, probably. Just go to
I've
your
seen
grocery
it,
store. They
yeah.
probably have it for you. I just had pasta with Beyond ground beef. It was sublime. It was spectacular. Just try it. It's fantastic, and it's not BS. I promise you that. The earliest example of a music festival can be traced back to the Pythian Games in ancient Greece. This 8th century BCE festival was part jam, part religious ceremony, honoring Apollo, the god of music, poetry, and art. Quick side note, recently I've been saying BCE instead of BC in my videos, and Christians have been the worst kind of Christians have been getting very mad at me for that, for saying before Common Era instead of before Christ.
I thought it was like the same thing. I mean, does it matter?
Cry me, who gives a shit? Sometimes you guys comment things and it does get under my skin, only when you're being spectacularly stupid. I don't care. You can comment that all you want. I don't give a shit. BCE. I'm gonna do it just to spite you now. Moving on. The religious aspect of the Pythian Games was taken pretty seriously, as each festival began with a blood sacrifice of 3 animals. Perhaps a goat, a sheep, and a pig. No order. Could be 3 pigs, could be 2 sheep. There's a lot of options when you're doing animal sacrifices. And also, I don't know if you know this, but they still do that for Coachella. You know, like they don't bring it up as much anymore, but in order for Coachella to exist, they do have to kill 3 baby goats. So next time you show up in your big sun hat, just know that a goat had to die, 3 goats for your hat. But the Pythian Games were full of music that honored Apollo by singing hymns and playing instruments like the kitara. That was a lyre-like instrument, which the both of them were the predecessor to the guitar. They were playing guitars. They were being douchebags and playing guitars. The catch is that this was the Pythian Games, not the Pythian Fest, so the whole thing was technically a competition. Basically, to put it in modern day terms, it's like if Lollapalooza was a gigantic battle of the bands, and also
if they actually sacrificed animals, that would have been kind of fucking sick nasty. Very metal. Didn't they bite like bats off of heads in like certain concerts or something? With Ozzy Osbourne and shit, or was that a rumor?
Every single song was about Jesus. That might be fun. I know just talking about Christians, but that might be fun. And what amazing prize did the best performers win at the Pythian Games? Ooh. Well, it was a laurel wreath. Yep, that's it. That's all you got. You got to wear a little fancy headdress, but I'm sure it got you all types of ancient Greece. So, to each their own. Okay, so let's skip ahead now a little bit to the 18th century, which is quite the big skip, but we have to make it. At this point, social gatherings featuring music had been primarily religious in nature, but as European cities grew, the people became godless. That's what happens. You get more than 100 people in the same room, someone starts talking about the old big guy in the sky. It's not good. Humans should be hermits. That's my lifestyle, except I moved in with my girlfriend. What a mistake. She can't hear me right now. London nearly doubled in size during this time, from 500,000 to close to 1 million residents. And as opposed to amateur musicians singing ditties to deities, professional composers and
ditties to deities, huh?
musicians were now playing for large crowds of rabid city slickers. 4,300 musical events were advertised in London from 1672 to 1749, which led German composer and music critic Johann Madison to write, "Und the Italians exalt music, the French enliven it, the Germans strive after it, the English pay for it well." I don't know if that was German. I don't know. I have no clue what that was, actually. The growth and prosperity set the stage.
The British people are paying their wallet.
For the first all-secular music festival ever. A 1784 presentation of the works of George Frederick Handel in the London's Westminster Abbey. It's like they always say, go woke, go Baroque.
Baroque,
that's a Jimmy Pitts joke. I don't get it, but he told me it was smart. The 19th and early 20th century saw a growth in aristocrat-sponsored outdoor entertainment, generally of the choral variety, though some were lavish and featured orchestras and fireworks. And if all of this sounds very pinkies up and upper crust, that's because it was. These guys were one-percenters like a motherfucker. These festivals were primarily for the highly educated upper class during a time when the wealth gap was widening to unprecedented levels.
Is it as bad as it is now or not?
1910, 90% of all the wealth in Europe was owned by the top 10%. Can you believe that? How did they even live like that? That's such an unbelievable amount of money to be held by such a small amount of people. They should have done something. They should have done some crimes. Or not, I don't know. So while these music festivals were popular with the elite, most disgusting poors couldn't afford to attend. This resulted in the lower classes.
Dude, I actually learned about how British people lived like back in the day with like 12 people crammed into one space as a child from a book called Horrible Histories. It's a good series.
To attend. This resulted in the lower classes focusing on more musical traditions, which were more rooted in folk music and work songs, which are so sick. Shout out folk music. Chris, put up a picture of your favorite folk artist. I know you're a big folk head. In America, where London's choral and orchestral festivals were imitated, this class division led to a growth in folk festivals. Many of them even mirrored the ancient Pythian Games with their Devil Went Down to Georgia-esque fiddle competitions. And some of these festivals grew into long-running events, like the National Folk Festival and the Mountain Dance and Folk Festival. Personally, I find it hilarious that there was the Folk Festival and then the Mountain Dance and Folk Festival. Like, the people who started the Folk Festival must have been so pissed. They're like, you're just doing what we're doing. You're just doing a little mountain dance. What does that even mean? You're stealing our flow. But regardless, during this class divide in art and culture, World War II hit, pausing many leisurely activities for the sake of the war effort. And
well, yeah, you don't want to get a bomb dropped on you while you're just dancing around.
The things they paused were these gaudy aristocratic events. And also, the cartoons got racist for a little bit.
Oh, what we got here now?
Oh no, I've seen this clip!
Oh no, that's unfortunate. That is
Oh,
unfortunate.
By the time
that
the war
is
was over,
unfortunate,
people's
though.
musical
Oh,
tastes
shit.
have
Oh,
changed.
just put it back and nobody saw it. Oh, fuck.
Because we
Dude, I kind of feel bad for him. Like, how the fuck would he know that was in there, man?
just beat the shit out of Hitler's
yes,
ass. You know, we don't have time for that hoity-toity, fruity
Sheesh.
European shit that they were doing. And this is when the festivals started to let their little freak flags fly. The stuffy musical festivals of the upper class would come back after World War II, but they would lose their exclusivity and relevance. In their place came festivals dedicated to the West's new obsession with things like folk music and jazz music. Skidapapa, that's what it's all about, baby. The Newport Jazz Festival debuted in 1954, and those lucky enough to attend saw absolute legends like Billie Holiday, Ella Fitzgerald, Lester Young, and Dizzy Gillespie. I said it before and I'll say it again. Dizzy Gillespie is the best artist name I've ever heard in my life.
like
it goes so
jazz.
god hard. Not even that big of a fan of his music, but Dizzy Gillespie? Give me a cigarette. I want to start smoking them after hearing that name. The Newport Festival was a hit, hosting crowds of over 13,000 in its first year and inspiring the promoters to start the Newport Folk Festival in 1959.
Cool.
Now, I don't know if you know anything about Newport, but it's in this tiny little state in America called Rhode Island, and it's crazy how important Rhode Island is to...
So wait, Newports came from Newport? Wow. I would have never guessed that. I feel kind of like an idiot.
to overall music festival culture because it's Rhode Island. Have you ever been to Rhode Island? You wouldn't expect that. But yeah, Newport is where Miles Davis
Rhode
rejuvenated
Island is
his
kinda
career in
boring.
1955, changing the direction of jazz forever. It's also where Timothy Chalamet, oh my god, I can't remember the actual guy's name. Chris, put up the pic. Bob Dylan. Chris,
Bob Dylan.
edit all of that out. Don't let people know how stupid I am. It's where Bob Dylan famously went electric, marrying lyricism with rock and roll, demonstrating how the tenets of folk music could translate to modern
Very
sounds.
cool,
If you're a
man.
nerd for classical music, like I kinda am and Jimmy really is, do yourself a favor. If you see someone who recorded an album
Ray
at Newport, check it
Charles!
out. Ray Charles, Miles Davis, the Dave Bruckbeck Quartet, Muddy Waters all recorded legendary records from the Newport stage. And aside from major performances,
So cool.
Newport gave us the bones of the modern music festival. By the time the 60s were in the full swing, seeing traditional nightclub bands play on big stages
Boomers,
was
man.
no longer a novelty. People didn't
Dude, boomers had a pretty good time growing up, huh?
really give a shit about that. And the counterculture took this idea, along with a bunch of drugs that I can't mention or I'll get demonetized, and ran with it down the street and made a bunch of cool new festivals that we're about to talk about right now. The 60s were a pivotal time for redefining our perception of music
Drugs.
festivals. As the children of
Drugs.
World War II veterans became teenagers, they were a massive portion of the population because of the baby boom, which I talked about in a bunch of videos.
boomers.
You guys don't pay attention. And their taste in rock
Hey,
and
I
roll
pay
and soul
attention.
music led many promoters to
Jimi
see a new
Hendrix.
direction for festivals. For example, 1967 Monterey Pop Festival. Have you heard of it? It was the first major American rock festival and helped kick off what historians refer to as
Beach
the Summer of
Boys!
Love. I didn't know the Summer of Love was a real thing. I just thought it was something that old heads talk about because they pretended to be a hippie for a week and then they went to their jobs and had a flashback for the rest of their lives, and I can't say Chris, bleep both of those times I said it. But the Monterey Pop Festival took 3 days and was at the same site as the Monterey Jazz Festival and was an attempt by the promoters to use a music festival to elevate rock's popularity the way it did with folks and jazz. This festival had iconic performances. Have you heard of Otis Redding?
Yes.
No, Jimi Hendrix, perhaps.
Yes.
Oh, you still don't know? Are you that stupid? Janis Joplin, The Who. I can keep
Who.
going. Unfortunately, the influential documentary filmmaker D.A. Penbaker was there filming, adding to the mythos of hippie subculture with footage that captured flower
Those
power in
damn
all its
hippies.
glory. This is where
Apartment
Jimi Hendrix
hates
lit his
hippies.
guitar on fire on stage. It's all about it. That's what it's all about, baby. Why would he do that? I'm sure that guitar costed money. Monterey Pop took the blueprint of Newport and updated it for the psychedelic
Yeah,
era,
because
proving
he's
that the
cool,
youth was
right,
willing to
Chet?
pay to see the new wave of rock bands and laying out just how the sound of loud amplifiers and heavily mic'd outdoor stages would work logistically.
The sound must have been horrible, because like it's realistically it's your first concert ever, so it probably was horrible to listen to, like in the back at least.
Actually,
Maybe the
audio
front's
engineer
probably
Abe
fine.
Jacobs' sound system was the basis for PA systems at major festivals for years to come, earning him the nickname
Yeah,
the
they know the
Godfather
tech,
of
yeah.
Sound, which, for someone I've never heard of in my entire life, that's a pretty cool nickname to go to the grave with, if I'm being honest. Monterey Pop was a cultural success, introducing Americans to the
Look at all
burgeoning
them
counterculture in California.
Look at them damn hippies high shit.
California. Even classic 60s rock group Eric Burdon and the Animals wrote the song Monterey about their groovy festival experience. But even more than just the social cachet, Monterey was it made a lot of money, setting a precedent that rock and roll could make you cold hard cash. This set the stage for many imitators, which also turned out to be one of the most famous festivals that ever happened. Have you guys ever heard of Woodstock?
Yes,
I'm not talking about that
course.
weird little bird that follows Snoopy around. I'm talking about the place where your grandmother got banged in the mud. Division
What?
for the first Woodstock was similar to that of Monterey's, with performances by the Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, and Jimi Hendrix. Just like Monterey, there would be a film crew capturing the festival for a documentary. Seemingly, the only difference was they were trading in the beautiful skies of the West Coast for the upstate.
That was a thing. Dude, imagine the diseases in that fucking mud, dude.
New York vibes of trees. I don't know what's going on up there. There was just one big problem. Monterey had been at the forefront of the hippie subculture, but by the summer of 1969, the counterculture had become a full-blown movement.
Love,
Organizers for
money.
Woodstock assumed the festival.
That's crazy seeing that shit. All the boomers fucking worried about blowing up their 401k when they're 70 fucking years old now.
Would sell tickets to about
Ironic.
50,000 fans, right? But they were pleasantly surprised when 186,000 people pre-ordered tickets. I didn't even know pre-orders were a thing back then.
How did people have money for that shit back in the day?
And so they adjusted their expectations and predicted about 200,000 concert goers would attend. But here's the thing about hippies. They suck and they don't plan. They procrastinate until the very last second. Have you ever seen a hacky sack little circle going on? You think they texted in the group chat, hey, hacky sack at 5? No, those things just start happening. So by the time the actual festival was set to
Holy shit, look at that sea, man.
start, upwards of 450,000 people showed up for the 3-day event. It caused traffic jams nearly 8 miles long, to the point where people just abandoned their cars and started walking, which is insane.
God.
How much was a
Wait, but why would you leave it there? Then you can't get out? Are you trolling? Why would you?
car worth back then? What's happening to the economy where you can just abandon a car and assume it's gonna be fine?
That's what I was saying. Like, what?
The festival was flooded with so many attendees that the promoters became overwhelmed. They gave up checking for tickets or charging at the gate, and Woodstock essentially became a free festival. Which, I don't know about you, I guess hippies were chill about this kind of thing, but if I paid for a ticket and someone came in and they didn't pay for a ticket...
Well, I mean, you're barely gonna hear, like, any music at that point. Let's be realistic.
When you're sitting in first class on a plane and some snot-nosed kid comes up and sits when the flight attendants aren't looking, like, sure, get your bag, but I'm gonna complain and get my ticket free, because I'm not gonna, that's bullshit. It's bullshit. Why am I paying if I could just sneak on? Anyway, there were many famous performances at Woodstock, as I'm sure you know, from Joe Cocker doing the most insane and best Beatles cover ever to Jimi
my mom loved Joe Cocker, dude. That's crazy.
Hendrix slashing and burning his way through an avant-garde version of the Star Spangled Banner. But the real legacy of Woodstock was its perception as a hippie proof of concept. Nearly 500,000 people came together to experiment with sex and drugs, and for the most part, it was peaceful and non-violent.
Sex in the mud, diseases, everybody getting diseases.
Granted, there were 742 overdoses, which is not a great number. However, only 28 of those required
For how many people went? 200,000 people? I mean, that sucks, but that's not that many.
medical attention. These guys weren't doing hard stuff, and if they were, they weren't really. Like, you know, the drug I can't mention, and
500K?
They're doing drugs where you're really just like, you're gonna have a bad time, man. Drink some water. It's not like you're gonna die. But from a business standpoint, Woodstock was a nightmare. It lost nearly $1.3 million, and that's in 1969 money. And while the Harlem Cultural Festival and the Isle of Wight Festival would help close out the decade, the financial disaster of Woodstock put a somewhat sour taste in the mouth of promoters. And following Woodstock, there was a steep decline in rock music festivals, because not only were people afraid of losing money, but citizens were turned off by the riffraff, making it difficult to obtain the proper permits. No one's gonna sell out a festival when people are like bragging about how many drugs they're gonna do and how much sex they're gonna have in mud. That's a hard sell for, you know, just anyone owning space. So let's flash forward to the 90s, when things kind of sucked a little bit more, but they were still kind of cool. In the 90s, festivals came back with a new twist. Instead of destination events, they'd come to your backyard. In 1991, Jane's Addiction lead singer Perry Farrell launched Lollapalooza. He took inspiration from England's Reading Festival along with ramshackle vibe of Grateful Dead tours and added a 90s alternative flourish. The first Lollapalooza was actually Jane's Addiction's farewell tour, and they boasted their eclectic mix of hip-hop, industrial, and punk music. And most importantly, this package of early 90s alternative culture traveled from coast to coast. Lollapalooza's initial run had 26 dates in 21 different cities. It was such a success that the next year it grew to 36 dates in 30 cities. It set the framework for traveling music festivals in the 90s. Soon, it seemed like every genre had its own tour. In 1995, Warped Tour began, and you're not an American little shit if you haven't been to Warped Tour. The original Warped Tour featured punk, ska, hardcore, and
I had Trio, oh my god! Sum 41, yellow card, good shot! I haven't been because I didn't have money and I was a kid. I'm bummed.
Bands, essentially becoming a roaming hot topic.
Being to Warped shit was nasty. Yeah, but imagine when it was good though. I would have loved to go. Yeah, I didn't get to go. I was a kid. I heard about it though. I watched like videos and shit. I went, it was fine. Maybe it's like a luck of the draw kind of thing. Maybe you just got into a bad one.
There was always a few anomalies in the Warped Tour lineup. Like the Black Eyed Peas played and
your bro didn't go? Nah, it's too expensive. Like, by I don't know, by the late 2000s, I feel like my brother didn't have money. I mean, I was a kid, so like I didn't either.
1999, and Katy Perry played in 2008, which is like around the time I went. Like, it's just not good. And we have Ozfest debuting in 1996, originally a 2-day music festival before hitting the road as a traveling festival the next year. This metal-focused music festival got its start when Lollapalooza said, "We don't want Ozzy Osbourne to play at Lollapalooza." And he was like, he looked them dead in the eyes and he said, he meant to say he was going to go do his own thing with blackjack and hookers. Singer-songwriter Sarah McLachlan founded the Lilith Fair in 1997 after her frustration with the treatment of female musicians in the music industry. In its first year on the road, the all-female Lilith Fair became the top-grossing traveling festival and raised over $10 million for charity. And while many of the 90s music festivals would peter off and not make its way to the next millennium, they paved the way for the onslaught of music festivals that would come to us in the 21st century. Today, music festivals are big business. By some estimates, the global music festival market is worth $3 billion. With so much money at stake, the vibe of music festivals have shifted drastically since the idealism of the 1960s. It's hard to fool yourself into thinking that music festivals are still about—
Dude, if you imagine if you tried to pile in 500,000 people for a Woodstock now, there would be like bodies flying everywhere.
Love and artistry when Alex G is playing under a banner of a big blinking Bud Light light. Financial institutions are major sponsors at many festivals. 39% of the banking industry's sponsorship portfolio is now dedicated to music events and festivals. Still, it's hard to look at modern incarnations of festivals like Coachella and South by Southwest and pretend like it's what it used to be.
$20 water? Oh, you are lucky if it's $20. I've heard horror stories of like $30 water bottles. I'm not even kidding.
Speaking of which, let's talk about Coachella. I feel like I've been ignoring that besides making fun of it way earlier. Ironically, the roots of Coachella started in the early 90s when Pearl Jam was boycotting Ticketmaster. You'd think people would still be doing that, but no.
Wait! I remember reading about that. That's crazy, dude. I remember my brother told me about it. That Pearl Jam, like, I didn't listen to Pearl Jam. I think he did, and he told me, like, yeah, Ticketmaster fucking blows. Because they don't pay them enough. They take the money. They basically like don't pay the musicians shit. Yeah, for the tickets, and they take all of it. I don't think anyone likes Ticketmaster, to be honest. Yeah, it's because it's like the massive monopoly, and nobody gives a shit.
After helping Pearl Jam book alternative venues, promoter Paul Toilet
sucks.
That's a bummer of a last name. Saw potential for a large-scale festival in Southern California. The inaugural Coachella took place in 1999 with performances by Beck, Tool, and Rage Against the Machine. It was a cool idea with really cool bands, but if you have no sponsorships, it's not going to work. They lost $750,000. Eventually, the entertainment corporation AEG saw the potential of Coachella and purchased Toilet Production Company. It was one of the many music festivals that was acclaimed by AEG. I think they have over 26 right now, including Electric Forest, Just Like Heaven, Cruel World, Firefly Fest, and the legendary New Orleans Jazz Festival. It's all over. There's no such thing as like a small music festival going around. With AEG at the helm, Coachella became a profit-making machine, one overrun with corporate sponsorships from major brands
and rich white women running around everywhere paying for overpriced hot dogs. Love it.
like Coke,
Tasty.
Google, American Express, and YouTube. And while Coachella still boasts an eclectic, albeit more pop-focused lineup, its outsized role in our culture says more about the status than the art. Tickets for Coachella for 3 days range from $600 to a full grand, creating a barrier to entry, much like the European that they were doing that, you know, the poors hated. And we are the poors. Let's start hating.
Yep.
Regardless, Coachella's laughing all the way to the bank, ranking it over
Because people still pay for that shit.
$115 million a year. And then on the other end of the spectrum, well, I won't say the other end of the spectrum, it's different. South by Southwest. It's one of the few music festivals that rivals Coachella in brand recognition and scope. South by, as it's known to the cool kids, we call it South by. It's too long to say South by Southwest. Started in 1987, predating the wave of traveling festivals spurred by Lollapalooza in the 90s. It was founded by staff members of the Austin Chronicle as a showcase for local artists, featuring nearly 200 bands in its first year. But in 1994, they did something that not many other music festivals did, where they added an interactive element to the festival itself. It was a film and interactive element that ran concurrently with the music, and today those elements have taken over to the point where the biggest draw of South by is the tech and entertainment side.
Why do I want to interact and go into a VR chat room? What? While I'm at a festival with this stinky fucking headset that's probably being used by 50 people. I don't know, maybe it's cool. I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of funny. That can't be real, right? You didn't just VR chat, it's kind of experimental. Yeah, I've heard it's kind of interesting.
Twitter getting a big initial push when it first dropped in 2007 at South by, to its current reputation as a festival where notable TV shows and movies premiere. The festival now feels less like a showcase of up-and-coming bands, and more like a mix between Comic-Con and a technology expo.
Yeah, and the Cons Festival where they just show stuff.
Look, I'm not upset about South by promoting the next season of The Boys. I think it's cool that they're doing all this. However, when we're talking less about the bands and more about the brands, it's pretty clear that this has absolutely nothing to do with music anymore. And that's not just me being grumpy. The idea of consumers valuing experiences over goods is a concept called the experimental economy. Companies are leveraging the idea of a music festival, which in itself is an experience, and they're shoehorning their newest tech gadgets or film into the festivities.
Yes,
this creates a new way for customers to resonate deeply with the next superhero movie, and I thought we were done with those after the Avengers started to suck, but holy
nope, they gotta keep milking money and people still keep paying for this crap, unfortunately.
I guess we're still doing it. But whatever, it kills the vibe a little bit, but if we want to talk about killing the vibe, let's talk about some dog shit music festivals, because that's just a fun part of this script. It's hard to ignore. Not every music festival is an incredible moneymaker. A lot of them are dangerous and bad. For example, let's talk about Altamont. Have you ever heard of Altamont? It was a show. In 1969, the Rolling Stones hosted a free concert at Altamont Speedway in the hopes of creating a West Coast version of Woodstock. And if you don't know anything about the West Coast, you know it sucks big wang. Shout out
Hey! I live on the West Coast. Frick you.
East Coast, Beast Coast, which is a lot lamer than West Coast, Best Coast. We had to come up with a rhyme ourselves, but it's better. The festival featured big names like Santana, Jefferson Airplane, and the Stones themselves. Of course, any
true freaking Cali. Okay, but not all of the West Coast is Cali. Okay?
thing that the Stones were involved with throughout most of their history means that it was going to go to pretty quickly. It was plagued with problems from the start, creating a backdrop of chaos before the music even started, with venue changes, poor facilities, sound issues, and to help keep the crowd safe, the Rolling Stones had a brilliant idea. They reached out to their boys, the Grateful Dead, who had in ties to the Hells Angels, a local biker group, and they said, why don't they just do the security here? You know,
with no vetting whatsoever? What?
Save a couple bucks. That's a good idea. Get the Hells Angels to do security. This is like hiring the Hamburglar to run security at McDonald's. But it was hard to argue with the Hells Angels' asking price, which was $500 worth of beer. They didn't want much. They just wanted to get hammered. The Hells Angels were also aggressive, and many fights broke out in the crowd. By the time the Rolling Stones took the stage, the drama hit a boiling point, and a man approached the stage while pulling out a gun, which, not good, but then he was stabbed to death by the Hells Angels, also not good. It was the polar opposite of good vibes that were going on at Woodstock the previous year, and a moment that many historians look back on as a symbolic end to the idealism of the 60s. But that didn't stop people from trying to recreate Woodstock. Let's talk about Woodstock 99, another unbelievable disaster. In 1999, promoters cooked up the bright idea to celebrate the 30th.
You know it's gonna be bad because it's on the cusp of going into the millennia and people are fucking schizophrenic, paranoid motherfuckers. Why would you do that? If I knew about this fucking crazy millennia turnover, I wouldn't host any of this shit. We even had Woodstock in Poland? Wait, what? Really?
Anniversary of the original festival.
European
This was just 5 years after celebrating
Woodstock.
the 25th anniversary of the festival, but Disney does this. They celebrate every 5 years anyways. Anniversaries are anniversaries. People will show up. It was an obvious massive cash grab, and in contrast to the original Woodstock, the festival was heavily branded. You could actually sign up for a special
Limp
Woodstock
Bizkit.
Platinum MasterCard to pay
For what?
for incredibly overpriced waters, which, by the way, they ran out of. They ran out of water very quick. Poor planning and incredibly high temperatures led to a shortage of water, and soon dehydration and sour moods spread throughout the festival. The backdrop
Look at all the. Oh my god, I'm getting the ick. I'm sorry. That is so grotty, dude.
to this miserable experience was aggressive Y2K rap, scream rap, like Limp Bizkit and Korn and Rage Against the Machine. And Rage Against the Machine is pretty cool, but I don't know about Korn
like
and Limp Bizkit. That's not my cup of tea. The mood of the festival continued to deteriorate as people became dehydrated and restless. And Limp Bizkit got on stage, and you know their hit song Break Stuff, well, the audience said,
"Oh no." Chad is like, "Give me something to break. Give me something to break."
"Sure thing, Captain." The crowd immediately obliged by ripping apart plywood walls from makeshift festival structures. And instead of the Chili Peppers taking a second to pause and address the fires and violence that were going on in the crowd, the Chili Peppers decided to play the Jimi Hendrix song Fire as a literal fire blazed across the festival grounds. This ended up with cars being flipped, buildings being vandalized, and ATM and vendor booths looted. All told, 44 people were arrested, 10,000 more needed medical attention, 8 rapes were reported, and
Wait. Temperature soared to 100 degrees on the tarmac with bottles costing $4 a piece. $4 for a water. Overpriced. No, you know, like, I didn't even hone in on all this other shit. I just said water costing $4 a piece, and I'm like, holy shit. That's in the 90s? I know, but like $4 now is kind of like, you know, it's kind of like, it's not that bad. Yeah, $4 right now isn't that bad for a drink. It's okay. Like a big water bottle, yeah. Yeah, it'd be like $15. It'd be like fucking $20, no joke.
3 people died, essentially
Sad.
absolutely
07.
washing away any lasting thought that Woodstock was a good place to go to. It ended Woodstock. And of course, Fire Festival. How much did I read about the Fire? We don't need to talk about the Fire Festival.
Don't talk about the Fire Festival. That didn't happen.
Go watch
There wasn't even any, like, music. It was just a disaster. At least music here played and people were disgusting.
Documentary, except for the fact that he tried to make Fire Festival 2, scammed a ton of people out of money, and then he didn't do it. Are you dumb? Are you dumb to do that?
Yes.
Why would you sign up for that? Jesus Christ. Do you guys like music festivals? I went to one. I went to Lollapalooza, I guess Warped Tour when I was a kid, but like Lollapalooza when I was of drinking age, and I hated it. People are I don't like to stand next to
Yeah, why do you go then? I don't get it. I've been to concerts and they're okay. Like, you know, there's people around, but it's not that bad.
people. Little B was cool, but besides that, who gives a
I went to
Do you guys think it's worth it?
Smashing
There's a lot of people who love festivals.
That
If
was
you like
cool.
going to festivals, let me know if you do them sober. Let me know if you're okay with not taking a bunch of drugs and going to a music festival, because that seems like the
okay.
only
Never
appeal to
done
me. Also,
drugs.
yell at me for not mentioning your favorite music festival, because holy shit, there's a billion of them. New videos every Saturday and every other Wednesday. Like, comment, and subscribe. Please do all of those things. It's very important. And Extra Tug. New video every week.
Extra
They're
Tug.
dirty. This week I'm talking about lube. $4 a month. You get a new video. You get your name at the end of the video. You support me. I can do more things. I just filmed it on a street video. Satan's coming back. Get ready, boys and girls. It's happening. Okay? I don't have the cat. She's sleeping upstairs, and I don't want to bother her because I'm introducing 2 cats, and anytime she's sleeping is a good time. So thank you for watching. Have a great one. See you in the next one, I guess.
So cute. Did you guys go to any concerts? I went to Green Day, Smashing Pumpkins, and like a couple of other ones that I don't really remember. I think the Smashing Pumpkins one was in 2016, I want to say. Maybe it was 15 or 14. I can't remember. I've also been to classical concerts. Yeah, my parents dragged me to those too, like ballets and stuff. Lamb of God, Motorhead, and Gojira debut in 06. Damn, you old Bessie! I've seen Lindsay Sterling 3 times. That's cool! Lindsay Sterling's a really cool entertainer. She really knows how to entertain an audience.
Fire, fire, fire.